Let's move on to structures of memory. The multi-store model of memory is a theoretical framework that describes the process by which information is encoded, stored, and retrieved from memory. It was proposed by Atkinson and Schriffin in 1968 and suggests that memory consists of three separate stores: the sensory register, short-term memory, and long-term memory. The sensory register. The sensory register is the first stage of memory processing and involves the immediate and automatic recording of sensory information from the environment. The sensory register has separate components for different types of sensory input, including visual or iconic memory, auditory, echoic memory, and tactile, haptic memory. Information in the sensory register has a very short duration, a few hundred milliseconds, and is not stored unless it is attended to. Short-term memory. Short-term memory is the second stage of memory processing and involves the temporary storage of information that is currently being attended to or actively processed. Short-term memory has a limited capacity, about 7 plus or minus 2 items, and a short duration, about 20 to 30 seconds, unless the information is rehearsed or transferred to long-term memory. Short-term memory is believed to be located in the prefrontal cortex of the brain. Finally, long-term memory. Long-term memory is the final stage of memory processing and involves the storage of information that has been rehearsed or processed in short-term memory. Long-term memory has an unlimited capacity and can store information for an indefinite period of time. Long-term memory is believed to be located in various regions of the brain, including the hippocampus and the neocortex. The multi-story model of memory proposes that information passes through each of these stores in a linear fashion, with sensory information being briefly held in the sensory register before being transferred to the short-term memory. Information that is rehearsed or processed in the short-term memory is then transferred to the long-term memory for more permanent storage. This model has been influential in the study of memory and provides a basic framework for understanding how information is processed and stored in memory. However, it has also been criticized for oversimplifying the complex processes involved in memory, and for failing to account for the role of attention and other factors in memory encoding and retrieval. Each store in the multi-store model of memory has specific features that describe how information is processed and stored. These features include coding, capacity, and duration. Here's a description of each store's features. The sensory register. Coding. Information in the sensory register is represented in the same form as it was received from the environment. For example, visual information is coded in the form of visual images, auditory information in the form of sound waves, and tactile information in the form of touch sensations. Capacity. The capacity of the sensory register is very large, and it can hold a vast amount of sensory information simultaneously. The duration of the sensory memory is very short, ranging from a few hundred milliseconds to a few seconds. Short-term memory. Coding. Information in short-term memory is encoded primarily in the form of sound or speech-based representations, known as acoustic coding. However, other forms of coding such as visual and semantic coding can also occur. Capacity. The capacity of the short-term memory is limited, and it can only hold about 7 plus or minus 2 items of information at a time. Duration. The duration of short-term memory is relatively short, lasting only 20 to 30 seconds, unless information is being rehearsed. Long-term memory. Coding. Information in long-term memory is encoded in various forms, including semantic, visual, and acoustic coding. This allows us to retrieve information based on its meaning, appearance, or sound. Capacity. The capacity of long-term memory is believed to be unlimited, as it can store an indefinite amount of information over a lifetime. Duration. The duration of long-term memory is also believed to be unlimited, as some memories can last a lifetime, while others may fade over time. Serial position refers to the position of an item in a sequence or list. In the context of memory, the serial position effect refers to the tendency for people to remember items at the beginning and end of a sequence better than items in the middle. This effect is demonstrated through two distinct phenomena known as the primacy effect and the regency effect. First, let's look at the primacy effect. The primacy effect refers to the superior recall of items that appear at the beginning of a list. This is because items that are presented early in the list have more time to be rehearsed and transferred to long-term memory before subsequent items are presented. As a result, these items are more likely to be remembered than items later on in the list. Think primacy like primary, and primary school comes first. So these words are recalled first from the list. Let's have a look at the recency effect. The recency effect refers to the superior recall of items that appear at the end of a list. This is because items that are presented later in the list are still present in the short-term memory, making them easier to recall. As a result, these items are more likely to be remembered than items in the middle of the list. These are said to be the most recent in the list, hence recency effect. Case Study 1. Murdoch's serial position curve study was a classic experiment conducted by J. Murdoch in 1962 that investigated the effect of serial position on memory recall. Aim. The study aimed to explore how the position of an item in a list affects the likelihood of its being recalled. Procedure. The experiment consisted of presenting participants with a list of words and asking them to recall as many of the words as they could immediately after the list was presented. Murdoch varied the length of the list and the time interval between the presentation of the list and the recall test. The results. The results of the study showed a typical serial position curve with a U-shaped pattern of recall performance, like the one you can see below. Specifically, Murdoch found that the participants were more likely to remember words presented at the beginning and the end of the list, so the primacy and recency effects in action, than words presented in the middle of the list. The conclusion. The primacy effect was explained by the idea that the first few items in the list were more likely to be transferred into long-term memory due to their extended rehearsal time. The recency effect was explained by the fact that the last few items were still fresh in the participants' short-term memory when they were asked to recall them. Overall, Murdoch's study provided evidence for the serial position effect and demonstrated how it can influence memory recall. The study has been widely cited in the field of cognitive psychology and has helped shape our understanding of the mechanisms underlying human memory. A strength of this research is that it was conducted in laboratory conditions. Therefore, cause and effect is established. This means that the independent variable is the position of the word in a list, and the dependent variable is the probability that the word is recalled. Another strength of the research is that it is supported by research with amnesiacs. Research of amnesiacs has shown that people who can't store new long-term memories do not show a primacy effect, but they do show a recency effect. This shows that primacy effect is linked to long-term memory. A limitation is that it is an artificial task, as the participants had to learn a list of words which isn't meaningful to them. Therefore, the findings are only telling us about the ability to recall lists of words, not information that is meaningful to us.